A girl calls out to Ikuto, while another uses the cute nickname Ikkun. Someone else calls him Big Brother, and a duo addresses him formally as Ichisei-kun. The narrator wonders if this environment is actually a man's paradise, or perhaps something much more intense. In this reality, women possess an incredibly strong libido, leading them to become the carnivorous types who actively hunt for men. Our protagonist, Ichisei Ikuto, explains that he has lived in this world of reversed common sense for 15 years. He notes that the gender ratio is an unbelievable 1 man for every 20 women. While this might seem like a dream trope, the scarcity of men makes it a high-alert situation for any guy. He recalls growing up and going on his first outing with his mother. While his mom was busy shopping, curiosity led him to slip away and explore the mall. He was immediately spotted by women who were thrilled to see a little boy, with some even inviting him back to their houses. He eventually escaped, but his mother scolded him severely for being so reckless. Because of those past incidents, he had to finish middle school through education at home. However, he believes those days are over. As he enters high school, he feels ready to be pampered by cute girls and reach his peak of popularity. But he quickly realizes that other boys, like Tanaka and Takahashi, are actually terrified and just want to go home as early as possible. Since women are so aggressive, the men have become frightened herbivores. Still, Ikuto thinks that by his old world standards, there is no reason to turn down an invitation from a girl. Suddenly, 2 girls step in to tell the crowd to step back because they're frightening the boys. These are male guardians, students chosen specifically to act as bodyguards so that boys can live their high school lives in peace. They act as the middle ground between shy men and aggressive women. The terrified boys run away crying about how scary women are. The guardians tell the crowd to excuse them as they finish their work for the day. It turns out the term male guardian has a double meaning. They are girls who protect males, but they also have a very masculine and cool charm. Ikuto notices that these guardians are actually way more handsome than the average guy, and he wonders why girls still chase generic boys. He decides it is important to take the initiative and asks a couple of girls if they want to hang out since he's free after school. The girls respond by saying that they can't get close to him because of someone named Tosaka-kun. When Ikuto mentions that Rui is currently busy in the faculty room, the girls quickly clarify that he is completely misunderstanding why they can't approach him. The girls explain that they can't possibly interfere with the pairing between Ichisei-kun and Tosaka-kun, and they tell him he should just start dating him already. Ikuto thinks to himself that while same-gender romance is accepted in this world, he actually wants to date a beautiful girl, especially since Rui is a man just like him. After the girls leave, Ikuto reflects on his daily routine. He styles his black hair every day, and has even built up some muscle with visible abs. He notes that while he was popular when he first enrolled, he's now the only one left in the room, making him worry that a pampered harem life is just a dream. Since it's against the rules for boys to go home alone, Ikuto decides to go find Rui. He eventually spots Rui surrounded by a group of girls. Rui tells the girls he has to leave because of his duties as a male guardian. We get a good look at Tosaka Rui, a high-spec, prince-like guy with silver hair and long eyelashes. He's actually a bit taller than Ikuto. Everyone in school knows him because of how overwhelmingly cool he is. Rui apologizes for being late and explains he got caught talking to some girls after finishing his chores. Ikuto calls him a lucky jerk, but Rui mentions that while he appreciates the support, it's a bit of a problem when it happens every day. He admits he worries about Ikuto being alone, and notices that Ikuto seems much more comfortable around girls than other boys. Rui looks at Ikuto and asks if he can keep protecting him from right by his side. Ikuto is momentarily blinded by how handsome Rui is. He feels like a plain guy who can never compete with someone as perfect as his guardian.
Ikuto wonders if he is really that unpopular as a man, even in this strange world. When he starts pouting, Rui tells him that being by his side should be enough and asks if that isn't okay. Ikuto realizes he just can't bring himself to hate such a good-looking friend. Ikuto smiles and says that having Rui by his side is perfectly fine. This seems to surprise Rui. The narrator reminds us that even in this world, having a lifelong friend is a treasure. Rui gets a bit shy and mutters that Ikuto says things that get his hopes up without even knowing it. When Ikuto asks what's wrong, Rui quickly brushes it off and says they should get going. The two head toward a new cafe known for its great hamburger steaks. Rui makes sure Ikuto told his family he would be late so they wouldn't worry. Privately, Rui vows that he won't let any perverts get near Ikuto. After eating, Ikuto thinks to himself that the handsome Rui is probably the one who actually needs to watch out for perverts. Rui remarks that Ikuto is finally living a normal life, remembering how he used to talk to every girl he saw with absolutely no boundaries when they first met. Rui brings up how Ikuto used to say things that sounded like pickup lines back in the day. Ikuto is absolutely mortified and begs Rui never to mention his folly of youth again. He reflects on how he woke up in this world as a baby after almost graduating high school in his previous life, which explains why his common sense is so different. Rui decides to test Ikuto's knowledge and asks him why guardians are required to escort boys. Ikuto gets the answer right, explaining that if a guy is alone, he might be hit on or even taken away by force. Rui agrees and reminds him that a male guardian must always stay right by his side to keep him safe. The two walk by a girl who is pressuring a guy to come play with her for a bit. Rui steps in and politely tells the girl to release the man and stop her persistent attempts, mentioning that this kind of behavior can be traumatic for men. The girl runs off after apologizing profusely. Rui explains that by working as a pair, they can save men from these situations much more smoothly. Ikuto realizes that even after 15 years in this world, he still hasn't fully shaken off his old common sense, but he feels that Rui understands how to handle him perfectly. Ikuto tells Rui that his improved behavior is a result of her education. He's still convinced that Rui is actually the one in more danger of being targeted because he's so much cooler than the average guy. Rui's just glad that Ikuto has finally learned not to act on his own whims and wander off. The man they saved thanks them for their courage, but then he notices something about Rui's uniform. He suddenly runs away in a panic, leaving Ikuto confused about whether he remembered an errand. Rui remains quiet and simply tells Ikuto that they should keep moving. They finally reach Ikuto's place, where he waves goodbye and thanks Rui for the delicious steak and for hanging out. Rui waves back and heads home alone, thinking about how hard it is to part ways, but looking forward to getting home and changing into more comfortable clothes. Once inside her room, Rui begins to undress. She starts to wonder about the massive secret she is hiding and what Ikuto would think if he actually knew the truth about her. Rui is wearing a chest binder. She admits to herself that she is actually a girl and wonders if Ikuto would be happy to know that his male guardian is actually a woman. In a very vulnerable moment, Rui looks toward us and says that she wants Ikuto, and only Ikuto, to accept her for who she truly is. In this world, the gender ratio is 1 man to every 20 women. Since women are the aggressive carnivores and men have become the prey, the guys actually prefer women who are slender, petite, and flat-chested. It's because having a physique similar to their own makes the men feel less threatened and safer. We learned that this is exactly why male guardians cross-dress as men, to fit that non-threatening ideal. Rui is looking at her reflection in the mirror and realizing that her true form is the exact opposite of the world's ideal. She reflects on her past, but her thoughts are interrupted by a notification on her phone. She sees that Ikuto is out and about. Meanwhile, at a local supermarket, Ikuto is happily picking out his favorite soy sauce and nori salt-flavored chips. He's surrounded by girls who are shocked to see a guy shopping all by himself. He's just thinking about munching on snacks while watching a stream when suddenly he hears someone call his name. It's Rui. Ikuto is shocked to see her there, but she waves and tells him it's just a pure coincidence that she was shopping at the same time. She tells him that since she's there, she might as well wait and escort him back home. Rui mentions that she's happy he kept his promise to keep her updated on his location. Ikuto brags about how he handled the shopping trip just fine by himself, but Rui warns him not to let his guard down just because he wasn't hit on today. That's when Ikuto notices something and asks Rui what is up with her chest. Ikuto bluntly points out that she has boobs. Rui is in a total internal panic, realizing she was in such a rush to check on him that she completely forgot to wrap her chest. She starts sweating, wondering what on earth she should do now. She's terrified that Ikuto will reject her true form if he finds out the truth. But then Ikuto points a finger at her and shouts that he can't believe she went out of her way to cross-dress as a girl just to teach him a lesson about danger. Rui is absolutely stunned by how dense he is and just sighs, telling him he's a complete idiot. Ikuto starts thinking about how guys in this world usually get pampered to death and feels a bit jealous. Rui tells him he's a different kind of idiot than she meant, but then Ikuto admits that Rui with a large chest isn't bad either. This completely catches her off guard. Ikuto tells her she looks cute and even thinks to himself that he'd be interested if he weren't a guy. He realizes he's acting desperate, but Rui softly asks if he really thinks she looks cute like that. Rui gets really close to his face and asks for his honest opinion. Ikuto gets flustered but insists that he means it. Rui seems happy, thinking that it's okay since only Ikuto will see her true self. They decide to head home, and Rui smiles, thinking about how Ikuto is always just himself. As they walk, Rui asks if he has checked the group chat yet. She mentions that he has a message from his precious little brother. When Ikuto finally gets home, he finds his cousin, Ichisei Kuno, sitting on the sofa with a very stern expression, asking him why he's kneeling like he's in trouble. Ikuto is kneeling on the floor because his cousin, Kuno, is lecturing him about going out alone just to buy potato chips. Kuno claims that he isn't particularly angry, but his face tells a completely different story. Ikuto tries to brag that he managed to shop without getting hit on even once, but deep down, saying that out loud just makes him feel a bit pathetic. Kuno asks why he would ever go out alone and reminds him that women are dangerous. We find out that Kuno is only a middle schooler, but he's also a male guardian, which explains why he's so overprotective. He even admits that he would hold a grudge against every single woman in the world if Ikuto were ever attacked. Kuno gasps, realizing he let his true feelings slip out. He admits that his protectiveness comes from a place of deep worry and his own need for peace of mind. He tells Ikuto that while his kindness is a great trait, his total lack of fear toward women is actually a major flaw in this world. Kuno starts to feel bad, thinking his feelings are too heavy and that he should be the one to suppress them so Ikuto can live freely. Ikuto surprisingly thanks him, which leaves Kuno totally confused. Ikuto explains that he's just happy to know Kuno cares that much, and they agreed to find a middle ground that works for both of them. Ikuto thinks about how the correct way for men to live in this world is actually quite suffocating. He tells Kuno to just bring on the overprotectiveness because blindly obeying society's rules is boring. Kuno is clearly relieved to hear that Ikuto is fine with him staying exactly the way he is.
They wrap up the serious talk by making plans to go buy some expensive ice cream together the next day. Kuno finally adjourns the lecture, and both of them look much more relaxed. Later at dinner, Ikuto's mom mentions that watching him really glitches out her sense of how men are supposed to value themselves. Ikuto asks her if she honestly thinks he's a handful to take care of. His mom reassures him that he's a wonderful son and almost too good for her. She explains that while most mothers in this world spoil their sons rotten, she prefers letting him handle his own business. Ikuto likes this better because it feels more like his previous life. She then mentions to both Ikuto and Kuno that for some people it's very difficult to say what they are really thinking. Mom warns them that a single word can sometimes destroy a relationship, so Ikuto needs to make an effort to notice how others are feeling. Ikuto just laughs it off, saying that since there aren't any idiots around him, everything will be fine. The scene shifts back to school, where Rui is watching Ikuto sleep soundly in class. She sighs at how defenseless he is, while every other boy is constantly on high alert. She thinks to herself that even though she used to have zero interest in boys, getting to see his sleeping face makes the job worth it. We get a flashback into Rui's childhood and why she used to hate herself. Because she was so tall, boys called her the giant woman Tosaka and were terrified that she would attack them if they got too close. They judged her completely based on her appearance. Even the girls stayed away from her back then. Desperate to avoid being hated by the rare boys in the world, she started binding her chest. She felt like she couldn't go on living as her true self because she didn't fit the petite ideal that men preferred. When she entered middle school, she decided to reinvent herself as a cool ikemen girl. She changed her voice, her hair, and her entire demeanor just to make school life bearable. However, deep down, she hated herself even more because she felt like people only acknowledged the mask she was wearing, not the real her. She began to wonder what the point of her existence even was if she was only worth something when living a lie. That's when a counselor suggested she aim for a male guardian position at a high school. Rui was skeptical at first, thinking the boys would just be terrified of her and demand she be fired. Rui reflects on how she might as well get some good benefits like a scholarship if she's going to live a lie anyway. She tells herself she's only becoming a guardian for her own sake, not just to protect boys. The teacher then introduces her as Ikuto's new guardian, and she politely promises to do her best, while Ikuto just stares at her. Rui eventually notices Ikuto's intense staring and asks him if there's something on her face that is bothering him. Ikuto apologizes and admits he was just thinking about how insanely handsome she is.
He tells her it's amazing a genuine handsome guy like her exists and assumes she must have tons of fans. But Rui is secretly sad because she feels far from popular and has almost no friends. Ikuto feels bad for his assumption and apologizes for rushing their friendship. Rui tells him he doesn't need to apologize so much. Ikuto then suggests they drop the formal speech and asks if he can call her just Rui. Rui's heart skips a beat as she tentatively agrees. Ikuto excitedly tells Rui it's nice to meet you, and she realizes it's the first time a boy has ever smiled at her. She asks if he isn't afraid of her tall and large build, worrying that he secretly thinks she's just a giant woman like everyone else. Ikuto tells her that appearance doesn't define a person, and that personality and chemistry are what really matter. He says he truly wants to be her friend. Rui is shocked because she didn't think a boy like him existed, and her eyes start to water as she wonders if not all guys are exactly the same. Ikuto offers his hand and says he will be relying on her as his partner. Rui smiles and tells him she's counting on him too. Rui thinks about how Ikuto has kept her busy ever since that day. She notes how he's always chatting girls up because he's desperate to be popular, often causing misunderstandings. She worries that the aggressive girls at school would have eaten him alive by now if she wasn't there as her guardian. We see some examples. He sees a girl struggling with a massive stack of books and immediately offers to take them for her. The girl is completely caught off guard by his kindness. Later, he finds another girl sitting on the ground feeling sick. He asks if she's okay and offers her a piggyback ride to the infirmary, or even better, a princess carry. The poor girl panics, shouting that his offer is just going to make her fever spike even higher from the embarrassment. Rui watches all of this from the sidelines with a sigh. She realizes that Ikuto has convinced himself he's unpopular only because he happens to be standing next to a handsome guy like her. Ikuto simply says he's doing what anyone would do, but Rui knows the truth. She thinks about how Ikuto is way too oblivious to realize he's making even the most aggressive girl flustered and shy because they're simply not used to being treated this way. Back in the classroom, Rui looks at him sleeping and mumbles that life is certainly never boring with him around. She thinks to herself about the fact that she really is a girl, the exact kind of person Ikuto is searching for. She admits that while she doesn't just want any man, she would do absolutely anything for him. And that's where the chapter ends.
Ikuto mentions that something has come to his mind, specifically that their upcoming school trip into the outdoors is happening soon. Then, Ikuto feels a drop of water. Suddenly, it starts pouring. Ikuto wonders if it's a flash storm and realizes they need to find shelter immediately. Rui points out that heading toward a crowd of women for cover would be a dangerous move for them in this world. Ikuto agrees with her and asks Rui if she can run a little faster since his house is just around the corner. Rui seems surprised as she follows him, and they finally arrive at his place. Once inside, Ikuto notices that his mother and Kuno aren't home yet. He tells Rui that he's going to put his wet clothes in the dryer and suggests she do the same with hers. Rui is taken aback when Ikuto casually starts taking his shirt off right in front of her. Rui is completely stunned and can't believe what's happening. She panics and asks him why he's just stripping in front of her like that. Ikuto simply explains that he has to dry his uniform and doesn't want to catch a cold. He even starts showing off his abs, mentioning that he's been working out for 2 years and is getting close to having a six-pack. Rui is blushing so hard she looks like she might explode. Ikuto notices she's acting weird and asks if she's just nervous because she's at his house. He tells her to just relax and make herself at home since he's the only one there. Rui thinks to herself that him being home alone with her is actually the biggest problem of all. Rui ends up taking a shower first to warm up. She wonders if it's really okay for a guardian to go first, but admits the hot water feels amazing after being out in the cold rain. Suddenly, Ikuto calls out that he's coming in. He opens the door just enough to leave a basket of clothes, asking her if the water is hot enough. Rui is incredibly flustered but manages to thank him. Ikuto casually says it's fine, and that it's just more efficient for him to get her clothes ready while she washes up. Just then, a massive bolt of lightning strikes nearby with a deafening crash. Both of them are startled, and Rui lets out a terrified scream as the storm rages on. Ikuto tells her that the storm is really picking up and says he's going to make them something hot to drink. He mentions that he hopes the power doesn't go out, but Rui, looking completely shaken and vulnerable, begs him to wait and stay close to her until she finishes changing.
Rui admits that she's actually terrified of thunder and asks if that's weird. Ikuto tells her it's not weird at all. He points out that everyone has something they're bad at, and he even admits that he's scared of haunted houses. He tells her that since she's anxious, he'll stay right there on the other side of the door for her. Rui thinks to herself that Ikuto is incredibly kind. She remembers how he sees her as his male guardian and a precious friend. Ikuto even tells her that he treats her better than anyone else. Feeling the tension, Rui suddenly asks him what type of girl he actually likes. Ikuto thinks for a moment and says he likes girls who are cute, kind, and fun to be around. When Rui asks what he thinks about girls with big boobs, he honestly admits that he obviously loves them. He describes a tall girl with big boobs who's fun to be around as the ultimate combo, and says he'd love to meet someone like that. This sends Rui into a total blushing frenzy. Rui realizes she can finally face these strange feelings she has only for Ikuto. She admits to herself she never expected to fall in love with a boy, but now she wants to stay by his side as a woman and as an equal. She acknowledges her love for him and her desire for him to acknowledge her more than anyone else. She makes the bold decision that right now is the time to finally reveal her true form. Outside, Ikuto asks how the changing is going. Suddenly, Rui opens the door and tells him that she fits his description perfectly. Ikuto is completely confused by what she means. Rui steps out and hugs him tightly from behind. Ikuto is shocked and asks him what she's doing. Rui tells him to finally look at the real her. Ikuto is totally flustered and blushing. He thinks about how she doesn't feel like a guy at all because she's so soft. He finally starts to put the pieces together and asks if the person who has been with him this whole time is actually a girl?
Rui lets out a soft laugh and confirms that Ikuto is right about her being a girl. Ikuto is completely stunned by this revelation, unable to find words. Rui gently pushes Ikuto out into the hallway, telling him that it is now his turn to get into the warm shower. She tells him to go on and promises that she will give him a full explanation of everything once he is finished. Ikuto slides down the door in disbelief, trying to wrap his head around the fact that Rui has been a girl all along. After his shower, he returns to the room where Rui welcomes him back. Rui is sitting on the sofa, and Ikuto can't help but stare, wondering how she managed to hide her true figure for so long. Rui notices his shock and tells him to come sit by her, saying that she doesn't want him to feel like he has to apologize. She explains that even though she knew he thought she was a guy, she chose to stay quiet about it, so they should probably just call it even. Ikuto is so nervous that he can't even look her in the eye, so Rui asks if he would like to hear a bit about her past. Rui begins to tell him about how her height and her body caused her so much trouble since elementary school. She describes how she was feared by the boys and shunned by the girls back then. She explains that she went out of her way to hide her chest and changed her voice just to survive school life. Ikuto realizes that she is keeping the story brief, but he can tell that she went through far more pain than she is admitting. He feels like simply telling her to cheer up would be wrong because her reality was so difficult. Rui finishes her story and says she feels much better having told him. Then she asks Ikuto to look at her properly as she is now. Ikuto tries to keep his cool, but he feels like he might lose his composure because of how different she looks. He finally forces himself to look at her, and Rui asks him what he honestly thinks of her appearance right now. Ikuto thinks about how hard it must have been for Rui to find the right time to tell him she's a girl. He realizes that bringing up those painful memories was probably very tough for her, but it proves just how much she trusts him. He feels that he needs to be just as honest with her in return, so he softly calls out her name. He thanks her for being so open with him about her past and her true identity. He starts to get a little shy, scratching his head, before blurting out that he personally thinks she is super cute exactly as she is, tall and busty. Ikuto reaches out his hand, telling Rui that he is counting on her again from here on out. Rui looks at him and her mind flashes back to the very first time they ever shook hands. She lets out a big, happy laugh, and Ikuto tells her once again that she has a truly great smile. We see a memory of that very first day at school, where Ikuto reached out to shake her hand and told her she had a great smile, leaving her completely stunned. Back in the present, Rui points out that he said those exact same words on the day they first met. Ikuto laughs, realizing she's right. He tells her that while she is cool most of the time, a natural and happy smile like that suits her much better. Rui just gives him a genuine, beautiful smile that shows how happy she really is. The two of them sit together on the sofa, shaking hands as partners once again. Rui says that she will be counting on him too, and Ikuto happily agrees.
Outside, the storm finally begins to clear up, leaving their relationship stronger than ever before.